So just again, like contextually, so we have a very deliberate campaign here carried out by, we suspect, Russians, but like, you know, they're denying responsibility, and it's hard to kind of prove anything. And yes, there are people on the ground, eyewitnesses and so on, but not that many journalists or not from Western organizations. You then gather all this visual material, but one of the things that's striking about the investigation is also you have the radio communication of the pilots. How did you get that?
Yeah, there was, as we're investigating each incident, we're talking to witnesses about them. And often when you're talking to Syrians who are so familiar with this, they'll say, well, we know, of course it was a Russian aircraft, or of course it was a Syrian aircraft. How do you know? And I remember one filmmaker who made The Cave. He came in and we interviewed him for us, and he said it's the Russian aircraft, they sound like the dragons from the Game of Thrones. There's this enormous scream as they come in and they launch their attacks, but also the power of their weaponry. You know, they have the ability to launch bunker busters and to really do serious damage. So there was that evidence, but we didn't have any hard evidence. In one of the incidents, there was a source who told us, well, we know it was Russians because we have recordings of them, you know, carrying it out. And so then our ears picked up, and we knew about the spotter network in Syria. So because attacks were so frequent, there's a network of spotters that are listening into the open radio communications that Syrian and Russian pilots use. And they're also on the rooftops, and they're spotting and saying, police are police in my mind, because of the race and policing in the States. But they're heading northwest, they're near Kafr, or they're circling around a certain town. And they would log that into a spreadsheet. And once they hit enter in the spreadsheet, it's automatically tweeted out or alerted on mobile phone apps and that sort of stuff. So we knew that information wasn't retrospective to fit, you know, a narrative that, oh yeah, Russia definitely attacked. These are live accounts. But they also started recording those radio communications, and we managed to obtain those. And the immense value in that is, A, you can hear the pilots communicating with ground control, receiving coordinates sometimes, and also every one of them is time-stamped to the second. And so the challenge for us became identifying the minute of these attacks, so that through our visual evidence, through WhatsApp messages that doctors are sending between each other, they just hit us, that kind of stuff, through photographs that are taken of the moment or immediately after the attack, and that are shared on social media, and turning these open sources into primary sources who can share that evidence directly with us, with all of the file data that's embedded in it. And then do our sort of, like, you know, you're never using just one photograph, you're using multiple pieces of evidence to establish the time and relate what's happening on the ground with what pilots are flying in the air, where they were flying at that time, and who launched, which pilot launched a missile in those minutes.
So as you kind of create that narrative, you do what any journalists do anywhere, right? Like, you find multiple sources to confirm the same fact,
yeah,
and cross-reference. Was that with the radio communication? Was that the breakthrough, or were there other things that where you knew, okay, now we've got it?
The radio communications were the breakthrough, because, you know, we focused on again at the start of this campaign. There was a series of hospitals hit. I think there was 4 in one day on March 5th, or in a 12-hour period. And the UN were so appalled by that. Each of these hospitals were on their no strike list, that they actually named the hospitals. They usually don't do that. And they said something has to be done. So we started looking through all of the audio files for that. And of course, in our spreadsheet, we had the coordinates and the locations and the media and all the rest of it for these attacks. We were already looking into them. And at one point in the day, Dmitriy, our Russian video editor, he's the video editor of the whole project, but he's also a native Russian speaker. He's saying, I've got coordinates here. He bangs them over to Evan Hill. Evan Hill checks the coordinates and he stands up. He's like, we've got him, you know, because the coordinates matched exactly one of the hospitals that they had bombed. And so that was, you know, a slam dunk. The other ones, they didn't always share coordinates, but they did have a pattern by which they would prepare and launch the attack. So often they would receive the coordinates electronically, or it would be pre-programmed in before they took off on their launch, pre-identified on their mission. And they would be talking to ground control and say, okay, I've got coordinates. I need a correction on that coordinate. Got the correction. I'm going to bomb in this minute. And then they get, okay, you've got to go ahead. And then they'll launch it, and they'll launch it in the minute. And so, you know, that's what we were doing. We're matching each one of those launches up with the visual material and the attacks on the hospitals. And for instance, there's one pilot. You know, often the Russians, because they're using precision bombs, the Syrians will sometimes come in and just let a load of bombs go, and they'll like scatter along. The Russians will very often drop one. Sometimes they'll drop several, but they'll drop one, circle around, drop it again, circle around, and drop it again at the exact same point. And that's what happened with Kafir a few times. And each one is 5 minutes apart, and that same pilot is up there saying, coming around for a second one, 5 minutes, 5 minutes, 5 minutes.
And just like, why would that be? Why is that a tactic?
I don't know. I mean,
because it seems like you've already got people, you know, injured, scrambling, and
I mean, they call them double taps, you know, and you know, again, the whole tactic here is to really terrorize the civilian population into submission. And you know, if you think about hospitals in particular as like the final sanctuary for communities, you know, if you're keeping people away from healthcare and you're scaring them away from healthcare, then because you think you could be killed, even if it's an underground hospital, that's a tactic. I think, you know, bringing in this is what happened in Marathon Numan. They bombed a commercial area, and you have first responders flooding to the scene to pull people out from the debris, and next thing another bomb comes down on the exact same location. And again, it's a heinous tactic that is part of just the terror that they're inflicting on these populations.